Hi, I'm Kris from Theme Park to Table, cooking up theme park recipes right here in my kitchen. Tonight we're working on a recipe from Delish Loves Disney. We're still working our way through this recipe book. The recipe that we're working on today is the smoked brisket with chorizo-cheese fondue. This recipe is usually found at the Epcot Flower and Garden Festival. So this recipe is actually going to be a little bit different than anything we've done before. This recipe calls for a rub that then has to go in the refrigerator overnight and then has to go in the oven for 8 hours tomorrow. So we're going to film this part tonight. I'm going to get it rubbed. We're going to get it in the fridge. And then I will see you very early tomorrow morning to get it in the oven. So let's get started. The base of the rub is brown sugar. I have that right here. To that, we're going to add salt, chili powder, paprika, onion powder, garlic powder, black pepper, ground coriander, ground cumin, dried oregano. And this is for a little while later. So we're just going to take this and we're going to mix it all together. You want to make sure that the brown sugar isn't clumped or lumpy. And we're just going to get right in there and make sure everything is kind of broken up and incorporated into the rub. This recipe I have not actually tried. I don't think I've actually been to the parks during the Epcot Flower and Garden Festival. It's not the time of year that we typically take our trips due to work schedules and school schedules and all sorts of other things. I would love to go at some point and actually try some of the recipes that they do for this festival. So maybe sometime in the future, I will make it there for that one. We typically are there for the food and wine, which I have to say, I really enjoy. This is looking pretty well mixed. So I'm going to move this out of the way and get this out of the way and the list of ingredients out of the way so I can remember what everything was in order. I'm going to move this in, and we're just going to kind of take a handful, and we're just going to start kind of rubbing it on here. I very likely have way more rub than I'm actually going to use for this. Whenever I do a recipe like this, I always make more rub than what they call for, because there's nothing worse than getting halfway through rubbing a piece of meat or something and discovering that you're all out and having to clean up, get all your ingredients back out again, and start all over again. And whatever I don't use for the rub, I will put in a Ziploc bag and I will label what it was, and I'll stick it in the back in my pantry, and it will get some future use for something else. Now this rub is going to end up everywhere. I have yet been able to rub a piece of meat and actually not end up with it all over the surface, all around the cutting board and everything else. If any of you have a really good tip for how to keep your rub from going everywhere, I would love to hear it. For me, usually it means that after I finish rubbing something, I'm scrubbing tables, sweeping floors, perhaps vacuuming the rest of the house because it somehow ends up from one side of the house to the other. I'm just going to continue rubbing this. I'm going to make sure I get the edges really well. And I'm going to put a little bit more over here. I'm going to say that's pretty well rubbed. Now, they do call this a smoked brisket. And I have to say, I would not call this a smoked brisket. To me, a smoked brisket would be taking this outside and putting it in our smoker. This recipe actually calls for liquid smoke to be drizzled on it. If I was doing this on my own, I would not be using liquid smoke. I'd be using the smoker. But for the purpose of this recipe, I'm going to do what they say. And we're going to try it their way. It just says to kind of drizzle across the top. I don't want to go too heavy, and I don't really want to rub it on there because I don't want to take the rub off. So I'm just going to go on this side, and then I'm going to flip it over. And do the other side too. All the combination of all the spices together really smells delicious. I'm very much looking forward to trying this. What seems like a very, very long time from now. Okay, I'm gonna stop there with that. So from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap this in plastic wrap. I'm gonna put it in my tray and I'm gonna put it in the fridge overnight. And obviously I'm gonna wash up and clean up a little bit. And then I will see you back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, to pull this out of the refrigerator, see how it looks, and get it into the oven for about 8 hours. So until tomorrow. Welcome back and good morning. So here we are, and we have our big, beautiful brisket that's been in the refrigerator overnight and ready to go this morning. I have 2 pieces of aluminum foil here that I lined up and just kind of folded the edges on to get it so that I can open it up. The recipe does call for the brisket to be loosely wrapped and then put back in the pan to go in the oven. So we're going to try to get that in here. First, let's start by unwrapping and seeing how it looks this morning. Got a couple layers of plastic on here. I had to kind of go both ways with it so it would cover the whole thing. It's a very big piece of meat. Okay, I can tell you it smells amazing. There it is. So let's get this, my hands underneath it. Let's get it up and out. And we're gonna lay it right here. I'm gonna pull the plastic out. We don't wanna put that in the oven. And I'm gonna give my hands a quick wash. So that I don't get it all over the outside of the aluminum foil. Okay. Because this is just going to go into the oven and it's going to cook and the juices are going to come out, I'm not going to worry about the little juice in the pan this morning. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to fold it over loosely. I'm going to grab the ends, crimp them up, and then move this back to the pan. Okay, I'm gonna come over this way. I'm gonna open up our oven that's already preheated. And we're gonna put the brisket in. I do have the oven preheated to 250 degrees. And now that is gonna stay in the oven for about 8 hours or till it hits 210 degrees. I will be checking it throughout the day, and when we get close to 210, I'll be back. So we'll see you on the other side. Hi, I'm Kris, and welcome back. So it's been about 8 hours, and we're going to pull the brisket out of the oven, and I'm going to bump the oven temperature up to 350 to get it preheated for the potatoes to go in. So let's grab the brisket. Not really much to see yet because it's still covered. And I'm going to leave the foil over it while we prep the potatoes so this can sit for a few minutes so I don't burn myself when it's time to pull it. Let me bump my oven temperature up to 350 degrees. Get that started, and let's get our potatoes ready to go in. I just have regular russet potatoes. When I do my potatoes in the oven, I wrap them in foil. I know some people just kind of plop them right in without foil. Either way is fine. I also do this the same way if I'm going to put them on the grill. I will wrap them in foil and put them on the grill. So I'm going to get 6 pieces of foil. So I'm doing 6 potatoes. And then I've got a knife here. I'm just going to put a little stab in each side of them. Nobody wants an exploding potato. Okay, and the last one, put that in there. Then when I wrap my potatoes, I tend to go at an angle. I wrap them over once, give them a fold, and then go the rest of the way. So we're just going to quickly get the rest of these wrapped up and ready for the oven. So I have to tell you, the house right now smells absolutely amazing. It's been a little bit of torture smelling that brisket cooking all day long. It has made everybody in the house very hungry. I've had lots of people down here asking how much longer before they can see it and taste it. So it's very anxiously awaited right now. The last potato. Pop them back on here. While we wait for the oven to come up. Just gonna put those there for a second. Let's grab this guy. And we'll see how it looks. Okay. Still a little bit warm. And there it is. Boy, that looks beautiful. Now the question, of course, will be how pullable is it? And that's what we're about to find out. I'm gonna try to grab it out of here without burning myself. Gonna let that drain for a second. As I pull it, I'm actually going to pull it and put it back in there with the juices so that it stays moist, because there is still cheese sauce we have to make after the potatoes are done. We want to keep this nice and warm. So let's see. The recipe says to use a couple forks. We have some bear claws that we use when we do meat on the smoker, so I'm going to try to use these. There we go. Got to find a good place to start it though. That looks pretty delicious. So if you were using 2 forks, you would just hold them kind of in a similar way and just use the tines to kind of pull the meat apart. Let's see if I can make less of a mess now than I did when I rubbed it in the first place. Okay, so that is going to pull apart really nicely. That's coming right apart for me without any issues. And let's just do that. It's nice and moist. I know some people don't like that word, but juicy. It's definitely juicy. I'm going to get my potatoes in the oven because I just heard my oven click behind me. And I want to get these started. I'm going to go straight on the rack. I go horizontal so they don't get stuck in the little vertical slits. The recipe says about 30 minutes. You don't want them all the way soft because we're going to have to cut these in half and pull some of the filling out of them. So I'm going to put those in there. I'm going to shut that down. I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. And get that started. Okay, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pull the rest of this brisket, which is probably going to take some time. And I'm going to let those potatoes bake. And then we'll meet back here again, hopefully for the last time. We'll hopefully put the finishing touches on this recipe and get it on the table. Until next time. Welcome back. So our potatoes have finished roasting. I've pulled them out of the oven. They're right here. We are leaving the oven set to 350 degrees. And we're going to attempt to unwrap these without burning our fingers. Cut them in half and scoop them out. I'm going to unwrap all of them to give them a second to cool a little bit. I don't know if you can see it or not, but they are definitely steaming hot right now. Just put that in there for now. So let's finish getting these unwrapped. We're just about in the home stretch. We have just a few more steps to go before we're going to put this together, and then we get to eat it. Okay. And one last potato. Okay. We'll start with the one that we unwrapped first and hope that it has cooled a little bit. Just going to go right in half with it. They are definitely hot. Have that one. And this one. Okay. When I scoop out the centers, I am going to put the centers in this pan over here. We don't need all the centers for this recipe. Oh, that one broke. But I am going to use them for something else. I'm going to make mashed potatoes out of them later. I'm not going to throw them away. Okay. So there's that. And we're just going to kind of take about half of the filling out of the potato. So I want to leave an edge kind of all the way around. I want to have enough room in the center to put the brisket though and fill them up. So we're going to go there. These really are quite warm. If you're doing this at home, I would recommend maybe taking them out of the oven, opening them, cutting them in half, and maybe letting them sit for 5 or 10 minutes. They're going to go back in the oven to crisp up a little bit. So letting them sit would probably not affect the outcome, and it would probably save your fingers a little bit. But we are just going to try to power through. Okay. This is very similar to if you've ever made twice baked potatoes. Same process. With twice baked potatoes, you would take the fillings though and you would mash them, mix in cheese and bacon, green onions, whatever else you like in there, and then you'd bake them again with the filling in them. These ones, the filling is not actually going to go into. So some of our skins are falling apart a little bit. The potatoes are definitely not overdone. So I'm not sure why some of the skins are just kind of coming apart. Maybe just not as thick skinned of Idaho potatoes as some other ones are. Okay. Say we're about halfway there. So I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to cut away for a few minutes. I'm going to finish scooping these potatoes and I will probably see you in about 10 minutes. Okay, and we're back. The potatoes have all been scooped out. I even tried to scoop out our little friend who broke in half. We're still going to use him. He'll taste just as good as the rest when we throw some brisket and some stuff on top of him. So he's not going to go to waste. He'll still be eaten. These are going to go into the oven for about 10 minutes to crisp up. The oven is still set at 350. Those are in. Oh, I'm also going to put our brisket back into, it's covered and on the juice, just so it has a chance to heat back up again. Okay. We're going to set our timer for 10 minutes. And we are going to start over here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the drizzle for the top of this. So for the drizzle, it's 3 simple ingredients. It is mayonnaise, barbecue sauce, and pickle brine. I know, I'm questioning it too, but I'm gonna go with it. It's what it says to do. So we're gonna pour the pickle brine in and stir it all up. We're gonna have faith in the process. I'm gonna get that smooth. I mean, honestly, it kind of smells like a hamburger if you want to know the truth, with the pickle in there and the mayonnaise and the barbecue. And we're just going to scooch this off to the side. We'll need that when we get to the end. Get rid of that. We're going to move that. And now we're going to come back over here and we're going to start our chorizo fondue. I'm going to turn our pan on. We're going to grab our chorizo. It's ground chorizo. Ground chorizo, I had kind of a challenging time finding. So I would say if you can't actually find the ground chorizo, you probably could just as well buy some of the link stuff, split the casing, peel it off, and then kind of break it up yourself. This we're going to turn up to about medium high. We need this to get hot. We need this to start sizzling. We're also going to mix into this onions and butter, which I've just kind of chopped up to make it so it melts hopefully a little bit quicker. And this is actually going to be the base of our roux that we're going to use for this fondue. So I'm just going to turn the pan. So I have a handle I can grab. In the back we have our insides of our potatoes that I'm just sticking there for now. A little later on I'm going to make some mashed potatoes out of them. I'm probably actually going to throw them in a little baking pan, maybe top them some cheese and bacon, and do some loaded baked mashed potatoes. So this is all going to kind of melt down together. The idea, I believe, is that the fat from the chorizo should start rendering out and melting with the butter. And so that mixture we're going to add in our flour for the base of our roux. I do have a couple different kinds of cheeses over here. While I'm letting it heat up, I have Gruyere and I have Monterey Jack. Both I bought in block form and actually shredded myself. I just used a box grater and took a box grater of those earlier. And then put them in a Ziploc, and they were actually in the fridge. I could not find shredded Gruyere anywhere. In my travels, I went to several stores looking for ingredients for this recipe. And that was one thing I had to actually buy in block form from an actual specialty cheese counter to get it. So I don't know if that's an issue where you guys all live or if it's just kind of in my area. So we're starting to get a nice sizzle here. Starting to see the butter melting a little bit. You can kind of see the little hunks of butter there. I'm honestly not real familiar with chorizo. I don't know how spicy this is going to be. Like I know I've mentioned before in other videos, some of my family members are not quite as fond of spice as others. So I'm hoping that this doesn't pack too much of a punch. The actual rub itself for the brisket didn't have a lot of spicy spices in it. But this I'm a little unsure of what the heat level is going to be. Just trying to get the butter off my spatula. So this so far, time-wise, has been the longest recipe we've done. I think this is definitely the first one that I've had to actually have an overnight marinade for, and then several of the components have taken a considerable amount of time. So if this is a recipe that you're thinking about making at home, I would say definitely plan for it ahead of time. My brisket was bigger than the recipe called for, because I wanted enough to make sure we could feed the family for dinner. But it did roast in about 8 hours, like the recipe said. And then my potatoes took a little longer to bake than the recipe. I don't know. It doesn't specify potato size in the recipe, so I don't know. It just says baking potatoes. So maybe that was a little bit of the hold up there. Okay, so this is starting to render down quite nicely. I think we're almost ready for the next step. I'm just going to give this probably another 30 seconds or so. Okay. You can see the onions are starting to go translucent. We're looking for that. We're looking for the fat to kind of render out. And the onions are definitely on the softer. They're getting softer. So I think at this point, we are probably pretty good to add in our flour. This is just all-purpose flour. We're going to give it a sprinkle over the top. And then we're going to mix it all in. We want the flour to coat the meat and the onions. This is what's going to actually make the gravy, as you would, for the base of the fondue. So for the flour, what you're looking for here is you just want to cook it long enough to get rid of the taste of raw flour. You don't want to actually taste that. And then once the white is gone, you can kind of see how it's gelled to the meat. That's generally the point where I say you're probably pretty good to start adding your cream in. This is heavy cream. When you add it in, you want to add it slowly. You want to kind of slowly incorporate it in. You want to work on scraping the bottom of your pan, deglazing the pan with it a little bit. You just want to slowly add and keep mixing it. You don't want to go too fast because you don't want this to form lumps or clumps in your cheese sauce. And you want the heat to kind of evenly heat it up as you add it. So we're just going to keep going slow. Going to keep giving it a mix. And if you can see, but the bottom of the pan is starting to scrape clean there. That's kind of what we're looking for. All that flavor from the meat cooking onto the pan is now going to come up into our cheese sauce. It's going to add a nice depth of flavor to it. So we're almost there. We're just going to keep going in with this. We're all in. And we're just going to keep on stirring for a second. We want to get everything incorporated in. For this particular cheese sauce, because I did make a brisket that was a little bit bigger than the recipe called for, I am actually doubling the recipe. So if you make this as the recipe states, and I would encourage you to make it, so far it smells delicious, then just know that yours will be, you will have less sauce than this when you're doing it, unless you also choose to double it. Into this, we're going to add our salt, pepper, and a smidge of hot sauce. Okay, I'm going to stir that all in. And then as this simmers, which is kind of what we're waiting for, the sauce is going to thicken. And once it starts to thicken up nicely, that's when we start adding the cheese in. Still see this little hunk of hot sauce it doesn't want to incorporate. There we go. It was the last holdout. So now everybody's in the party. Let me give this a good stir. I'm going to keep scraping the bottom. You don't want it to stick to the bottom. Definitely don't want it to burn. And then we're going to stop in just a second to see how our simmer is doing. That's a pretty good simmer. If you look, I don't know if you can see, if I can scrape fast enough, you can see that the bottom of the pan, I can't really scrape it fast enough for you to see. The bottom of the pan does not have anything stuck to it anymore. As you're scraping, you can actually feel that when the pan comes clean. Okay, we've got a really good simmer going now. Okay, if you look, so the test is always, you should clean the back of a spoon. So if you look at that, I can go like this. It holds the form. That means it's ready for the cheese. So first, I'm actually going to turn this down a little bit. Give it a stir, because we don't want it to burn while I'm adding stuff in. Even a little bit more. We're going to go about medium-low. That is our potatoes. Let's take a quick peek. They look pretty good. I don't think they're in jeopardy of overcooking, so I'm just going to leave them while we finish up the cheese sauce. So they're nice and hot when we put everything together. Give this one more stir. I'm going to go in with the Gruyere first. And we're going to give this a mix. This is likely going to be very thick. We are going to stop the timer though, because that is obnoxious. So I'm just going to mix this in. We're going to get it all incorporated. Once again, if you try to put too much cheese in all at once, it's not going to melt even. So you're going to want to kind of go in stages with this. And now, if you grab a Monterey Jack, I'm actually going to go about half of what I have here. And we're going to give it a stir. Get that all incorporated in. Oh, it smells so good. Kind of smells like cheesy, sausagey heaven, honestly. Okay. And then we're going to go the rest of it. Okay. And we're going to get this all mixed in. Oh, little cheese overboard. It's not really cooking with Kris without something flying somewhere though, right? So here we go. This is our home stretch, everybody. I have to tell you, I'm kind of exhausted. It was a late night last night getting everything put together, and an early morning this morning to get this up and in. and I am hungry and ready for dinner. Okay, so let's just finish this. Okay, got a few more little strings, but I mean overall that looks pretty gorgeous if you ask me. I mean, what more can you ask for in a fondue? It's a nice consistency. Got a little bit of cheese in my spoon that's not really melted, but that's okay. It'll sink in and melt in as we go. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to turn off my oven, and then I'm going to start pulling some stuff out so we can put this together. Okay. We're going to grab our potato boats out. And I'm actually going to put the brisket right over here. Grab a couple. There we go. I'll put these right here to protect the table because the brisket's going to land there. Okay, brisket. And then we're going to get this shot. We'll pop off this guy and this guy. Open this up. I did only pull about half of it for right now. That should be enough to do our boats. It might even be enough to feed us dinner, and that way I can slice that and wrap it for leftovers for sandwiches. So we're going to grab our plate. I'm going to grab one of our boats. I'm going to grab the tongs. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some of this brisket in here. I'm going to give this a little toss in the juice. That does look amazing. See if we can get some nice pieces of that. Put a little bit more in if I can get just a little bit more. It all kind of wants to come out and join the party right now. Okay, there's our brisket. And then we're going to grab our fondue. Actually, I'm going to be better off bringing this to the fondue instead of trying to move that big pan of molten cheese across the kitchen. I don't see how that would ever go well for me. So we're going to put our fondue on here. Okay. And then last but not least, we're going to put, for the homemade ingredients, our barbecue drizzle on, just kind of across the top. And the final ingredient is just store-bought salsa verde. I'm just going to put a little bit of this on here. And there it is. The smoked brisket with chorizo fondue. Give this a little spin so you can get a really good look at it. So if you like this video, hit like and subscribe, and we'll be coming back doing some more theme park recipes in my kitchen. Until next time.